The Miami sun blazed overhead as Sarah Collins checked her diving equipment one final time. Another day of teaching tourists how to explore the coral reefs. Another day of pretending her life had meaning beyond the endless blue depths. At 32, she'd become Miami's most sought-after diving instructor. But lately, even the ocean felt suffocating. She was driving home along the coastal highway when the impossible happened. A sleek private jet, gleaming silver against the azure sky, suddenly lurched sideways. Black smoke poured from its engines as it spiraled downward, heading straight for the ocean just a quarter-mile offshore. Sarah didn't hesitate. She'd spent 15 years diving these waters, knew every current, every depth, every dangerous coral formation. While other drivers pulled over to stare and film with their phones, she grabbed her emergency gear from the trunk. The jet hit the water with a thunderous crash that sent waves rushing toward the shore. Sarah was already sprinting across the sand, her mind calculating water temperature, depth, and how long someone could survive. Before I continue with this heart-stopping rescue, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. This story is going to take you on an emotional roller coaster you won't want to miss. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Are you in Florida like our heroine Sarah? New York? Maybe somewhere across the country? I love connecting with my viewers. Give this video a thumbs up if you're already hooked, because trust me, what Sarah discovers about the man she's about to save will change both their lives forever. Now back to our story. Sarah dove into the choppy waters, her powerful strokes cutting through the waves. The jet was sinking fast, its nose already disappearing beneath the surface. Through the murky water, she could see a figure slumped against the pilot's seat. Unconscious, maybe dead, but she had to try. The cabin was flooding rapidly. Sarah forced her way through the partially submerged door, her lungs burning as she fought against the incoming water. The man was tall, dark-haired, probably late 30s. Blood trickled from a gash on his forehead, but she could see his chest rising and falling, barely. Getting him to the surface took every ounce of her strength and training. By the time she dragged him onto the beach, a crowd had gathered. Someone had called 911, and sirens wailed in the distance. As the paramedics worked over him, Sarah caught a glimpse of his face. Even unconscious and battered, he was striking. Sharp jawline, olive skin, expensive suit now torn and soaked. There was something about him that made her unable to look away. "Ma'am, you saved his life," one of the paramedics said as they loaded him into the ambulance. He wouldn't have lasted another 5 minutes down there. Sarah watched the ambulance disappear into Miami traffic, not knowing she'd just rescued the most dangerous man in the city. Capítulo 2. At Miami General Hospital, Sarah paced the waiting room, her wet hair still dripping onto the sterile floor. She'd given her statement to the Coast Guard and the FAA, but something kept her from leaving. Maybe it was the way his eyes had flickered open for just a moment in the ambulance, dark and confused, searching her face as if trying to remember something important. "Ms. Collins?" Dr. Martinez approached with a clipboard. "The patient you rescued is awake. He's asking for you." Sarah's heart skipped. "Me? But he doesn't know me." "That's the thing," the doctor said carefully. "He doesn't seem to know anyone, including himself. The head trauma has caused significant memory loss. You're the only person he remembers seeing." Room 314 was private, expensive. Someone had already made arrangements. Sarah knocked softly before entering. The man from the jet sat up in bed, looking lost despite his obvious strength. Without the blood and salt water, she could see he was devastatingly handsome. "You saved me," he said, his voice rough but warm. "They told me you pulled me from the plane." "Just doing what anyone would do," Sarah replied, though they both knew that wasn't true. He studied her face intently. "I wish I could remember more than just your eyes looking down at me. The doctors say I have amnesia. I don't remember my name, where I live, what I do for work. Nothing." His frustration was evident. "But I remember the feeling of being safe when I saw you." Something fluttered in Sarah's chest. She'd always been independent, had sworn off complicated men after her last disaster of a relationship, but there was something vulnerable about this stranger that called to her protective instincts. "What did you tell them your name was?" she asked gently. "I didn't. They have no ID, no records of the flight plan. It's like I don't exist." He looked at his hands, strong and callous despite his expensive watch. "The only thing that feels familiar is violence. Like my hands know how to hurt people. What kind of man am I?" Sarah sat in the chair beside his bed. "Maybe you're a boxer or a contractor. Lots of jobs require strong hands. He almost smiled at that. You're trying to make me feel better. Is it working? This time he did smile, and Sarah felt her world tilt slightly. What's your name? Sarah Collins. Sarah. He tested the name like fine wine. It's the only thing that feels real right now. Would you mind staying a while? I know it's crazy. But you're the only anchor I have to whoever I used to be. Outside the hospital room window, 3 black SUVs circled the parking lot. Inside one of them, Vincent Romano studied surveillance photos of the woman who'd rescued his nephew. Phase 1 of eliminating Michael had failed, but perhaps this Sarah Collins could serve his purposes in ways he hadn't originally planned. Sarah had no idea that her simple act of heroism had just painted a target on both their backs. Capítulo 3. 3 days later, Sarah found herself doing something she'd never imagined, checking a mysterious stranger out of the hospital. The man who still had no name, had no insurance cards, no next of kin, nowhere to go. The hospital social worker had mentioned county facilities and homeless shelters. Absolutely not, Sarah had said before she could stop herself. Now, as she unlocked the door to her beachfront cottage, she wondered if she'd lost her mind. She lived alone for good reasons. She valued her independence, her privacy, her carefully controlled world. This is beautiful, he said, taking in the open floor plan, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean. You live here alone? Yes, and I like it that way, Sarah said quickly, then felt bad about her tone. I mean, I'm used to it. I'm not great with... people. He tilted his head, studying her. You seem great with people to me. You saved a stranger's life and brought him home when you didn't have to. That's different. That was... Sarah trailed off, unsure how to explain the pull she felt toward him. Instinct, he suggested. I seem to run on instinct too. And my instincts tell me you're someone I can trust completely. That afternoon, Sarah showed him around her small neighborhood. He moved with an unconscious authority, scanning surroundings, noting exit routes. When a group of teenagers got too loud near her mailbox, his posture shifted subtly, protectively. Sorry, he said, catching himself. I don't know why I do that. Maybe you were in security, Sarah offered, though something about his bearing suggested more than simple security work. They walked the beach as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Sarah found herself talking more than she had in months, telling him about her diving, her love for the ocean, her quiet life. What about family? He asked. Parents died in a car accident when I was 20. No siblings, just me. She usually hated admitting how alone she was, but with him it felt natural. I'm sorry, do you ever feel lonely? Sarah considered this. I used to think I preferred being alone, but since yesterday... She stopped, embarrassed. Since yesterday? Since you, everything feels different, like I was holding my breath and didn't realize it. He stopped walking and turned to face her. Sarah, I need to tell you something. I've been having dreams, fragments of memories. They're not good. Violence, fear, people who seemed afraid of me. What if I'm a dangerous man? What if I've hurt people? Sarah looked into his dark eyes, seeing the genuine torment there. Then you're not that man anymore. People can change. How can you be so sure? Because dangerous men don't worry about being dangerous. That night, as Sarah lay in her bed listening to him move restlessly in the guest room, she didn't know that Vincent Romano had placed surveillance equipment throughout her neighborhood. She didn't know that every word they'd spoken on the beach had been recorded, that her simple kindness was being twisted into leverage against a man whose memory was slowly, inevitably returning. All she knew was that for the first time in years, her house didn't feel empty. Capítulo 4. Sarah woke to the sound of shouting. Heart pounding, she grabbed her robe and rushed to the guest room. He was thrashing in bed, caught in the grip of a violent nightmare, speaking rapid Italian. So no, please, not the warehouse. I'm sorry. His face was twisted in anguish. Hey, wake up, Sarah said gently, shaking his shoulder. You're safe. You're with me. His eyes snapped open, wild and dangerous for a moment, before recognition flooded in. Sarah? God, I'm sorry. Did I hurt you? No. You were having a nightmare. You were speaking Italian. He sat up, running his hands through his hair. I was in a warehouse. There were men begging, and I was holding a gun. His voice broke. Sarah, what if I'm a killer? Sarah sat on the edge of the bed without thinking, her hand covering his. Tell me exactly what you remember. It was dark, concrete floors, men tied to chairs, and I felt powerful, like I enjoyed their fear. He looked at his hands in horror. These hands have pulled triggers, haven't they? Before Sarah could answer, her phone rang. Unknown number. Sarah Collins? The voice was smooth, older, with a slight Italian accent. You don't know me, but we need to talk about the man you're harboring. Sarah's blood went cold. Who is this? Someone who knew him before his convenient memory loss. His name is Michael Romano, and he's the head of the Romano crime family in Miami. The man you saved has killed more people than you could imagine. The phone went dead. Michael, she finally had a name for him, was staring at her with dawning horror. Michael Romano, he whispered. That name, it feels right and wrong at the same time. Sarah's mind raced. Everything made sense now. His expensive clothes, the way he moved, the private jet. But it also made no sense. The man who'd been gentle with her, who worried about hurting people, couldn't be a cold-blooded killer. Even if that's who you were, she said firmly, it's not who you are now. How can you say that? You don't know what I've done. I know you've had a dozen chances to hurt me and haven't. I know you have nightmares about violence instead of dreams about power. I know you'd rather remember nothing than remember being cruel. Michael looked at her with something like wonder. You still want to help me? More than ever. If that caller is right about who you were, then we need to figure out who you want to be now. Neither of them noticed the small red light blinking from the smoke detector above them, Vincent's listening device capturing every word. By morning, Vincent would know that Michael's memory was returning in pieces, that the girl had become emotionally invested, and that it was time to accelerate his plans. The hunter was closing in, and his prey still had no idea they were being watched. Capítulo 5. The next morning, Sarah made a decision that would change everything. While Michael slept fitfully, she drove to the Miami Public Library and began digging into the name that had haunted them both through the night. Michael Romano. What she found in newspaper archives made her stomach turn. Headlines spanning 5 years. Romano family violence escalates. Businessman found dead after crossing Romano Empire. FBI targets Miami Mafia boss. Photo after photo of crime scenes. Federal raids. Suspected associates found floating in Biscayne Bay. But it was the most recent article that stopped her cold. Michael Romano, presumed dead after private jet disappears over Atlantic. Dated just 4 days ago. Someone had tried to kill him. The plane crash wasn't an accident. Sarah's hands shook as she printed everything. The Michael Romano in these articles was described as ruthless, calculating, feared throughout Miami's underworld. But the man sleeping in her guest room flinched at loud noises and apologized for taking up space. When she returned home, Michael was in her kitchen making coffee, looking domestic and peaceful. The contrast with the newspaper photos was jarring. You went somewhere, he said, reading her expression. You found out, didn't you? Sarah spread the articles on her dining table. Michael studied them with growing recognition and horror. Romano shipping, Romano construction, Romano real estate, he read aloud. All fronts for money laundering, extortion, worse. His voice was hollow. Look at this body count, Sarah. Look at these families destroyed. Michael, no, look at this picture. He held up a surveillance photo from the FBI files. That's me leaving a restaurant where 2 men were found shot execution style an hour later. I remember now pieces of it. The fear in people's eyes when they saw me coming. The way grown men would beg for their lives. Sarah studied his face. The same strong jaw, the same dark eyes, but everything else was different. Where the man in the photos looked cold and predatory, Michael looked haunted. What do you remember? She asked carefully. Fragments. A yacht where I ordered someone killed for stealing from me. A warehouse where I personally broke a man's fingers for information. And the fear, Sarah, the constant fear that someone would try to take everything from me. He buried his face in his hands. I was a monster. Was, Sarah emphasized. Past tense. How can you still look at me the same way? Because you're not the same man. The Michael Romano in these articles wouldn't care about nightmares or worry about hurting people. He wouldn't make coffee or apologize for existing. Michael looked up at her with desperate hope. I think people can really change that completely? I think trauma can reshape a soul, and I think the man you were died in that plane crash, the man I pulled from the water, is someone new. Outside, Vincent Romano lowered his binoculars and smiled coldly. His nephew's memory was returning exactly as planned, piece by agonizing piece. Soon Michael would remember everything, including who had orchestrated the plane crash, But first, Vincent needed to eliminate the girl who was making his nephew weak, making him doubt the family business. Sarah Collins had no idea that her research had triggered a countdown. By sunset, Vincent's men would be moving, and the quiet life she'd built was about to explode into violence. Capítulo 6. That evening, Michael's memories crashed back like a tsunami. Sarah found him standing on her deck, staring out at the ocean where she'd pulled him from death just a week ago. "I remember everything now," he said without turning around. "My childhood, my father's funeral when I was 16, the first man I killed when I was 19. His voice was steady but hollow. "I remember why someone wanted me dead." Sarah joined him at the railing, her heart racing. "Tell me." "My uncle Vincent, my father's younger brother. He's been waiting 30 years to run the Romano family, but my father left everything to me. Vincent's been systematically weakening my operations, turning my people against me, waiting for the right moment to strike. The plane crash. He sabotaged the engines. I was flying to a meeting in Nassau, a meeting he arranged. I should have seen it coming." Michael's hands gripped the railing until his knuckles went white. "He tried to murder me, Sarah, my own blood. But you survived. That has to count for something." Michael turned to look at her then, and Sarah saw something that made her breath catch, a hardness creeping back into his eyes. "Vincent made one crucial mistake. He left me alive long enough to remember who I really am." The transformation was subtle, but unmistakable. Michael's posture straightened. His voice took on an edge of command. "I built the Romano Empire into the most feared organization in Florida. Vincent's about to learn what happens when you come for the king and miss." "Michael." "Wait, it's not Michael anymore," he said quietly. "That name belongs to the broken man you saved. The man standing here now is what I've always been, a Romano. And Romans don't forgive betrayal." Sarah felt like she was losing him in real time. "What about us? What about everything we've shared this week?" For a moment, his mask slipped, and she saw the vulnerable man who'd been afraid of his own shadows. "Sarah, you saved more than my life. You gave me a glimpse of who I could have been in a different world. But this is the world I live in. Vincent won't stop until I'm dead, and anyone close to me becomes a target." "So you're going back to being a killer?" "I'm going back to being a survivor. There's a difference." The sound of cars pulling into her driveway cut off her response. 3 black SUVs, just like the ones that had been circling the neighborhood. Sarah's blood turned to ice. "Vincent's men," Michael said, his voice completely calm now. "He's tired of waiting." "What do we do?" Michael looked at her one last time, and Sarah saw the exact moment he made his choice. "We run, and then I remind my uncle why my father chose me over him." As armed men surrounded the house, Michael Romano, the real Michael Romano, began to emerge from the ashes of his amnesia. But Sarah wondered if the gentle man who'd worried about being dangerous was disappearing forever, and if saving his life had cost them both their souls. The war for the Romano Empire was about to begin, and Sarah Collins was no longer just an innocent bystander. Capítulo 7. The back of Sarah's cottage led directly to the beach, and Michael moved through her house like he'd been planning an escape route all week. Maybe he had been, she realized. Even with amnesia, his survival instincts had remained razor-sharp. "Stay low, follow me exactly," Michael whispered, as Vincent's men kicked in her front door. "And Sarah? From this moment on, everything changes. The man you've been taking care of is gone." They slipped out through her bedroom window as the house filled with armed figures. Michael guided her across the sand with military precision, using the dunes for cover. His entire demeanor had transformed. Gone was the uncertain, gentle man who'd made her coffee. This was someone who'd survived decades in a world where hesitation meant death. "There's a safe house 10 miles north," he said as they reached her neighbor's dock. "We need a boat." "Michael, this is crazy." "Not Michael," he corrected sharply, hot-wiring the engine of a speedboat. "That name died tonight. I'm what I was born to be, the head of the Romano family, and Vincent just declared war." As they sped across the dark water, Sarah felt like she was watching a stranger wear Michael's face. Every trace of vulnerability had vanished, replaced by cold calculation. "What happens now?" she shouted over the engine noise. "Now I remind everyone why they feared the Romano name before Vincent started his coup." The safe house was a fortress disguised as a beach cottage. Michael's men appeared from nowhere, loyal soldiers who'd been searching for their missing boss. Sarah watched in stunned silence as they knelt before him, reporting on Vincent's takeover attempts, the territories lost, The business is seized. How long was I gone? Michael asked. 8 days, boss. Vincent told everyone you were dead. Started consolidating power immediately. Michael's laugh was without warmth. 8 days to think he could erase 30 years of Romano dominance. He always was impatient. Sarah pulled him aside as his men prepared weapons and vehicles. This isn't who you are anymore. You've changed. Have I? Michael's eyes were stranger's eyes now. Or did I just remember who I really am? Sarah, the man you saved, was dying in more ways than one. He was weak, vulnerable, everything a Romano can't afford to be. He was human, Sarah shot back. He cared about people, worried about causing pain. And that humanity nearly got him killed. Michael cupped her face gently, but his touch felt different now, possessive rather than tender. I care about you more than I've ever cared about anything, but caring makes you a target in my world. The only way to protect what matters is to be more ruthless than your enemies. What if I don't want to be protected by someone who's lost his soul? Michael stared at her for a long moment. Then you don't know me at all. My soul was lost long before that plane went down. What you did was give me something worth protecting it for. Before Sarah could respond, one of Michael's men burst in with urgent news. Vincent had put $1 million bounty on Michael's head and another $1 million on the woman who'd saved him. Every criminal in Miami was hunting them. Michael's reaction was swift and deadly cold. Double it. $2 million for Vincent, dead or alive. Let him see what real Romano money looks like. As his men dispersed to spread the word, Sarah realized she was seeing the birth of something terrible. Not just the return of a Mafia boss, but the creation of a monster who loved her enough to become more dangerous than ever before. The gentle man who'd worried about his violent dreams was gone forever. Capítulo 8. Vincent Romano sat in Michael's former office, behind Michael's former desk, savoring the irony. For 8 days, he'd systematically dismantled his nephew's empire, claiming each business, each territory, each loyal soldier. The old guard who remembered Vincent's older brother, Michael's father, had fallen in line once they believed Michael was dead. But the phone call that morning had shattered his confidence. Your nephew lives, his informant had whispered, and he's remembered everything. Now, as Vincent watched surveillance footage of Michael moving through Miami like an avenging angel, he understood the depth of his miscalculation. He'd created something worse than the nephew he'd tried to eliminate, a Michael Romano with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Sir, his Lieutenant Marcus entered nervously, 3 of our safe houses have been hit in the last 2 hours. Professional work. No witnesses, no survivors. Casualties? 15 men dead. And, sir, they all had the same message carved into their foreheads. Marcus swallowed hard. The word Romano. Vincent's blood ran cold. His nephew wasn't just reclaiming territory. He was sending a message written in blood. Meanwhile, Sarah watched from a hotel room as news reports detailed the escalating violence. Bodies found in warehouses, businesses burned, men disappearing from their homes in the middle of the night. Michael had become exactly what she'd feared, a monster who justified brutality as protection. So you're creating a war zone, she said, when Michael returned from his latest raid, his clothes spotless but his eyes holding the echo of violence. I'm ending a war my uncle started, he replied, pouring himself a drink with steady hands. Every hour Vincent breathes is another hour he can hurt innocent people. What about the innocent people caught in the crossfire? Michael's jaw tightened. There are no innocent people in my world, Sarah. Only predators and prey. Vincent made you prey the moment he put that bounty on your head. So this is about me? This is about everything. Michael moved to the window, scanning the street below with professional paranoia. Vincent doesn't just want my empire. He wants to prove that Romano blood means nothing. That respect comes from fear alone, not from honor or loyalty or the strength to protect what matters. Sarah joined him at the window. The man I saved from the water wouldn't have recognized the person you're becoming. The man you saved was living a fantasy. This is reality. Michael turned to face her, and for a moment his mask slipped. Do you think I enjoy this? Do you think I wanted you to see me like this? Then stop. I can't. Vincent has made sure of that. Michael's phone buzzed with an incoming message. His face went white as he read it. He has your friend Anna, Sarah's diving partner, her only real friend in Miami. What does he want? A trade. You for her. Tonight at the warehouse district. Sarah was already reaching for her jacket. Then let's go get her. Absolutely not. It's a trap. Of course it's a trap, Sarah said fiercely. But she's innocent in all this. If anything happens to Anna because of me— Michael grabbed her arms. Nothing will happen to you while I'm alive to prevent it. And what happens to you? Vincent's not planning a fair exchange. Michael smiled then, and it was terrible to see. Vincent's about to learn the difference between a Romano, who was hiding from his nature, and one who's embraced it completely. As night fell over Miami, uncle and nephew prepared for a final confrontation that would determine not just the future of the Romano Empire, but the soul of the man Sarah had pulled from the sea. Capítulo 9. The warehouse district at midnight was a concrete labyrinth of shadows and industrial decay. Sarah crouched beside Michael behind a shipping container, watching Vincent's men position themselves around the central building. Even with her limited tactical knowledge, she could see it was a kill box. No cover, multiple elevated positions, every exit covered. 30 men at least, Michael murmured, studying the layout through night vision binoculars. Vincent's not taking any chances. How do we get Anna out? We don't. Michael's voice was calm, which somehow made it more terrifying. You're going to stay here while I go remind my uncle what happens when Romano family members forget their place. Sarah grabbed his arm. Michael, this is suicide. Even you can't fight 30 men. Watch me. But before Michael could move, Sarah's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Come alone or your friend dies. 5 minutes. Michael read the message over her shoulder, his jaw clenched tight. Vincent's getting impatient. I'm going in. Like hell you are. He has Anna because of me. This ends now. Sarah stood before Michael could stop her, walking toward the warehouse with her hands visible. Vincent Romano waited in the center of the vast space, flanked by armed men. Anna was tied to a chair beside him, duct tape over her mouth, but her eyes blazing with defiant fury. The famous Sarah Collins, Vincent said with mock courtesy. The woman who pulled my nephew back from the dead. How poetic that you'll die in the same place where he should have learned respect for his elders. Let Anna go. I'm here, of course. But first, I want Michael to see what happens to people who interfere in Romano business. Vincent raised a gun toward Anna's head, but the shot that echoed through the warehouse came from above. One of Vincent's men dropped from a catwalk, a sniper's bullet through his heart. Chaos erupted as Michael's voice boomed through the space. Uncle Vincent, did you miss me? Michael dropped through a skylight like an avenging angel, moving through Vincent's men with deadly precision. Sarah had seen him gentle and broken, had watched him struggle with fragments of violent memories. But this was different. This was Michael Romano at full power, every movement calculated, every shot perfectly placed. You always underestimated me, Michael called out as he methodically eliminated Vincent's advantages. Father saw it even if you didn't. Vincent grabbed Anna as a human shield, but Sarah was already moving. Her years of diving had taught her to function under pressure, to make split-second decisions in life-or-death situations. She tackled Vincent from behind as Anna rolled away from her chair. The gun went off. Sarah felt a burning sensation across her shoulder as she and Vincent hit the concrete floor. Then Michael was there, pulling Vincent to his feet with one hand while checking Sarah's wound with the other. It's just a graze, Sarah gasped. Anna? I'm okay, Anna called out, working to free herself from the ropes. Sarah, who the hell are these people? Michael ignored the question, his attention focused entirely on his uncle. 30 years you waited. 30 years of pretending to be loyal while planning this betrayal. You were weak, Vincent spat. Soft. Father should have chosen me. Father chose correctly, Michael said quietly. He knew the difference between strength and brutality, between leadership and tyranny. Michael's gun pressed against Vincent's temple. But you're right about one thing. I was too soft before. Thank you for fixing that. The final shot echoed through the warehouse, and Vincent Romano's coup died with him. Capítulo 10. The silence after the gunshot was deafening. Vincent Romano lay motionless on the concrete floor, and with him died 30 years of family resentment, betrayal, and blood. Michael stood over his uncle's body, the smoking gun still in his hand, his face a mask of cold satisfaction. Michael, Sarah whispered, pressing her hand to her bleeding shoulder. It's over. But when Michael looked at her, Sarah saw something in his eyes that made her blood freeze. This wasn't relief or sadness, or even grief for the uncle he'd just killed. It was pure, calculated satisfaction. No, Michael said quietly. It's just beginning. Anna struggled to her feet, staring between them in shock. "Sarah, what is happening? Who is this guy?" Before Sarah could answer, more of Michael's men emerged from the shadows. They'd been positioned throughout the warehouse the entire time. Sarah realized with growing horror that Michael had never been in real danger. This had been an execution, planned and methodical. "You used me as bait," Sarah said, understanding flooding through her. "You knew I'd insist on coming. You counted on it." Michael holstered his weapon, his attention already shifting to his men. Vincent had to die believing he was winning. The only way to draw him into the open was to give him exactly what he wanted. "You. What if he'd killed me before you could intervene?" Michael finally looked at her fully, and his expression was stranger's eyes again. But he didn't, and now the Romano Empire is secure. Sarah felt like she was seeing him clearly for the first time. Not the vulnerable amnesia victim, not even the conflicted man struggling with violent memories. This was Michael Romano in his truest form, a chess master who moved human beings like pieces on a board, including her. "The plane crash," she said slowly. "How long have you known Vincent was behind it?" "I suspected from the moment my memories started returning. The flight plan, the meeting in Nassau. It was too convenient, too perfectly arranged." Michael began walking toward the warehouse exit, his men falling into formation around him. "Vincent always was predictable." "Then why didn't you tell me?" Michael paused. "Because you would have tried to talk me out of killing him, and because I needed you to react genuinely when he threatened you. Vincent had to believe you were an innocent victim." Sarah stared at him in disbelief. "Everything this week, your uncertainty, your fear about being violent, that was all an act?" "Not all of it." Michael's voice softened slightly. "My feelings for you are real, Sarah. More real than anything I've ever experienced. But those feelings exist within who I really am, not who you wanted me to be." Anna grabbed Sarah's uninjured arm. "We're leaving, now." But Michael stepped between them and the exit. "I'm afraid that's not possible. Sarah knows too much about Romano operations now. For her own protection, she'll need to stay under my security." "That's kidnapping," Anna said fiercely. Michael smiled, and it was terrible in its genuine warmth. "That's love. Sarah saved my life, and now I'm going to spend the rest of mine protecting hers, whether she wants it or not." Sarah looked into the face of the man she'd pulled from the ocean, searching for any trace of the vulnerable soul she'd fallen for. But that Michael Romano was gone, if he'd ever really existed at all. "I won't be your prisoner," she said quietly. "You'll be my queen," Michael replied. "There's a difference." As his men closed ranks around them, Sarah realized the most chilling truth of all. Michael genuinely believed he was saving her, just as she'd saved him. In his mind, this was love. Possessive, controlling, and absolute. The gentle man who'd worried about being dangerous had become the most dangerous man of all. Capítulo 11. Michael's oceanfront mansion was a fortress disguised as a paradise. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of the same waters where Sarah had pulled him from his burning jet 2 weeks ago. But the armed guards patrolling the grounds made it clear she was no longer a guest. She was a beautiful prisoner. "You can't keep me here forever," Sarah said, standing on the balcony of what Michael called their bedroom. "I don't want to keep you anywhere," Michael replied, joining her at the railing. "I want you to choose to stay, to see that this life I'm offering you is better than anything you had before." Sarah gestured at the luxury surrounding them, the silk drapes, the marble floors, the staff that catered to her every need except the freedom to leave. "This isn't love, Michael, it's possession." "Is it?" Michael moved closer, and despite everything, Sarah felt her traitorous body respond to his proximity. "Tell me you don't feel the connection between us. Tell me that what we shared in your cottage meant nothing. What we shared was with a different man." "No," Michael said firmly. "It was with the same man who's standing here now. The amnesia didn't change who I am fundamentally. It just stripped away the armor I'd built over years of violence and betrayal. For 1 week, you saw my soul without the protection I've learned to wear." Sarah turned to face him fully. "And what happens to that soul now?" "It belongs to you," Michael said simply. "Everything I do, every choice I make, is to protect what we have. Vincent taught me that showing weakness invites destruction. I won't make that mistake again. By becoming a monster, by becoming strong enough to deserve you." Through the windows, Sarah could see Miami's skyline in the distance. Her old life, her freedom, everything she'd built for herself reduced to a view from a gilded cage. Anna had been released unharmed, but warned never to contact Sarah again. Michael had made it clear that anyone who tried to rescue Sarah would simply disappear. What about my diving, my work, my independence? Michael's eyes lit up. I've been thinking about that. There's a marine biology research foundation that needs funding. You could run the entire program, have unlimited resources, make a real difference in ocean conservation. Under your control, under my protection. Sarah, you saved me from drowning. Let me save you from a life that was too small for what you're capable of becoming. Despite herself, Sarah felt the temptation in his offer. She'd always dreamed of doing more than teaching tourists to dive, of actually contributing to marine research. And Michael was offering her unlimited resources to pursue those dreams. And if I say no, Michael's mask slipped for just a moment, showing her the vulnerable man underneath. Then I'll have saved your life but lost your love, and that would be a tragedy worse than drowning. That night, as Sarah lay alone in the massive bed while Michael handled business downstairs, she stared out at the ocean and remembered the moment she'd first seen him sinking beneath the waves. She'd acted on instinct then, diving in without hesitation to save a stranger. Now she had to decide, was the man she'd fallen in love with still drowning beneath the surface of the Romano Empire? Was there enough of his original soul left to save? Or had she simply rescued a different kind of predator from the depths, one who would consume her as surely as the ocean might have consumed him? The sound of gunshots in the distance reminded her that in Michael's world, love and violence were often indistinguishable. Tomorrow, she would have to choose between the freedom of her old life and the dangerous paradise of her new one. But tonight, she could only listen to the waves and wonder if saving his life had cost her own soul in return. Underworld, Capítulo 12. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the deck of her new research vessel, watching her marine biology team collect coral samples from a reef she'd discovered the previous week. The work was exactly what she'd dreamed of, meaningful, well-funded, and making a genuine difference in ocean conservation efforts. Michael had kept every promise about supporting her career, but the armed guards discreetly positioned around the boat reminded her that dreams and prisons could sometimes look remarkably similar. Dr. Collins, her research assistant, called out, "We're getting incredible biodiversity readings from Sector 7. This could be a completely new ecosystem." Sarah smiled genuinely for the first time in weeks. This was what she'd been meant to do, not teaching spoiled tourists, but actual scientific discovery. Michael had given her a platform she never could have achieved on her own. "Sarah," Michael's voice came from behind her, and she turned to find him watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. Uncertainty. "What is it?" "I need to tell you something. About the night Vincent died." Michael moved to stand beside her at the railing, his usual confidence replaced by something rawer. "I lied to you." Sarah's heart clenched. "About what?" "I didn't know Vincent was behind the plane crash until that night in the warehouse. The memories didn't return gradually. They came back all at once when I heard his voice on the phone." Michael's hands gripped the railing. "I was terrified, Sarah. Not of dying, but of losing the man I'd become with you. I don't understand. The week I spent with you, without my memories, that wasn't an act. That was who I really am underneath everything I've had to become. You didn't save a monster from the ocean. You saved the part of me I thought was dead." Sarah stared at him, processing this revelation. "Then why did you become so cold afterward?" "Because I thought I had to choose between being the man you loved and being strong enough to protect you. Vincent's betrayal proved that my enemies would use my feelings for you as a weapon." Michael turned to face her fully. "But I've realized something these past months, watching you work, seeing you passionate about your research, falling in love with you more deeply every day. Strength isn't about shutting down your humanity. It's about having something worth fighting for." "Michael, I'm disbanding the violent parts of the Romano operations. The legitimate businesses will remain, but I'm getting out of the criminal empire. I want to build something better, for us, for any family we might have someday." Sarah felt her world shift. "You're serious?" "I've already begun transferring territories to other families, selling off the questionable businesses. It will take time, but I want to become the man you saw in me during that week." Michael reached for her hand. "I can't undo my past, but I can choose our future. What about the danger? Your enemies. There will always be risks, but we'll face them together as equals, not as captor and prisoner." Michael pulled a small device from his pocket. Sarah recognized it as the remote for the security system that had kept her confined. He handed it to her. "You're free to leave whenever you want. Sarah, free to choose this life or walk away from it entirely." Sarah took the remote, feeling its weight. For 3 months, this small piece of technology had represented everything she'd lost. Now it represented everything she might choose to gain. And if I choose to stay, then you stay as my partner, not my possession. Equal voice in all decisions, full autonomy over your work and your life. The only prison between us would be the one we build together, out of love, not fear. Sarah looked out at the ocean that had brought them together, at the research vessel that represented her dreams fulfilled, at the man who'd somehow found a way to love her enough to let her go. "I have one condition," she said finally. "Anything. We get married on this boat, over the reef, where we first made love again after you remembered everything, and our children grow up knowing they're descended from a man who learned that true power comes from choosing love over fear." Michael's smile was the same one she'd fallen for during his first night in her cottage. Vulnerable, hopeful, and completely real. "Is that a yes?" Sarah dropped the security remote over the side of the boat, watching it sink into the depths that had given her everything worth keeping. "That's a yes to the life we're going to build together, to the man you're choosing to become, to loving someone brave enough to drown his old self and be reborn." As the sun set over the waters where their story began, Sarah Collins and Michael Romano proved that sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is save someone's life, because they might just save yours in return. 6 months later, their wedding made headlines as the most secure oceanfront ceremony in Miami history. But for Sarah and Michael, floating above the coral reef where love had conquered fear, it was simply the moment when two people who'd saved each other finally stopped drowning and learned to swim together toward a future they'd chosen to create. The Romano Empire was dead, but the Romano family, built on love instead of violence, was just beginning.